I must say how pleased I am to be here today. I'm honoured to be selected to give this lecture. I'd like to thank Jeff and his wife for doing this. Because it's nice for people to see it really. But I think this sort of thing is particularly professional to see people moving out to the line and talking about some of the things that are important to them. I'm very pleased to be in this environment. There are a lot of good friends and former colleagues and associates and dance partners and wine consumers. And so today I chose as my topic something that's sort of driven my whole sort of career as a low vision optometrist. Some of the things you said there were not true, that I'm always seeking new ways of doing things because I don't understand what I'm doing most of the time. I have, as a clinician, I've got a slightly richer background in the science side of things than most scientists, and most scientists say I'm too clinical for the science. I'm somewhere sitting on the fence, and I rather enjoy that because I love seeing patients, I love the problems that they raise, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today are issues that emerged out of me having to understand what my patients are seeing and doing, and how their visual abilities are affecting their capacity to enjoy their life and to do the tasks they would like to do in their life. And so clinical assessment of vision and visual functionality are the topic of my talk today. I should make a disclosure, I guess, and that is that one of the products I'm about to talk about, the University of Victoria, is probably the goes to support my vision at UC Berkeley. And we're going to begin by talking about visual acuity charts, and can't begin talking about visual acuity charts without talking about Snellen. But there's no such thing as a Snellen chart. There never has. So there was, but only after a short period, everybody started modifying it after Snellen did the first one. This one here is the only Snellen chart here. This is an American, commonly called Snellen chart from one company, probably wrote it off in the 1930s. And this comes out of England, different letters, different size sequences, different charts. Snellen charts are generally all different. One is different from the next. When we became engaged in a low vision research project, we being Jan Lovey and I, Jan Lovey Kitchen, we started to look at assessing the vision of people with macular degeneration and characterizing their visual capacities. And we looked at Snellen charts and found that they just didn't have enough sampling at the top of the scale. And what I tried to show here is, if you look at the first three letters on the Snellen chart, you take it from this blue level to this green level. On this chart, there are 20 letters that cover the same range, not just 3. Go down, so we've got 10 letters, and we end up with 35 letters to cover. Much finer scale, much higher density of sampling in the core visual acuity end of this 20 to 2200 kind of size range. But the important thing about the development of this chart was that we standardized the test task. So the test task is the same as you go from one size level to the next. In order to standardize the test task, you need the same number of letters at each row. That's pretty obvious. The ratio of size as you go from one size to the next should also be obvious. And we've got a constant ratio of size progression. Some might call that a logarithmic size progression, but I'll lost my language. And there's proportional spacing between the letters, so as you go down, there's always one letter width between the adjacent letters. There's always one letter height between adjacent rows. And we've done things to balance the difficulty of the optotypes, so that within this family of optotypes, some letters are easier to see than others, to recognise than others, So we make sure that we don't have a row of all easies or a row of all difficulties. A common solve. And when you do this, it means that you can move the chart to a different distance, and the person just goes to a new region of the chart. If you keep them in focus, they're going to get exactly the same result. The other thing that this chart does, it allows you to ask by how much is the vision different, or by how much has it changed, and if you express that in terms of numbers of letters or number of lines, it means the same thing, whether you're down the good end of this chart or the high end of the chart. If you're 2 letters worse, it means your vision is just a little bit worse by about 10%. And so it enables, well, it almost invites scoring visual acuity letter by letter. Here I want to make an important point that gets missed by most optometric clinicians. Most optometric clinicians and ophthalmology clinicians are really but when they record visual acuity, more often than not, they give it row by row. The person gets 20/20, or they get 20/25. They don't make, most people don't make a distinction. Many people do, that's one, but more often than not, it's just a straight difference. And if you are going to score row by row, the person is either going to get a 20/40 or a 20/50, nothing in between, you have to have a rule. You might say on the chart that's got 5 letters per row, you might say 5 letters right, that's what you're required to be given the row. But no, 4 letters right will give you the row, or 3 letters right will give you the row. Doesn't matter what rule you have, you've got to have a rule. And if you have a rule like that, this is what happens when you do test and retest with normally sized people. That's 60% of the time, thereabouts, you'll get perfect agreement between your first test and your second test. 20% of the time, people will do one row better on their second repeat, and 20% of the time will get 1 row worse. A lot of the people who get 1 row better will get 1 row better because they got 1 extra letter that took them over a boundary. And so when you think about that, you say perfect agreement 50% of the time. 20% of the time, 1 letter, 1 row better. 20% of the time, 1 row worse. Occasionally, you won't even get 2 rows to test and retest, the same person, vision hasn't changed. If this happens, and it happens, it cannot not happen, your criterion for change must be 2 rows of change. So if you test the person today, they come in and say, I think my vision is worse next day. If you find 1 row difference, you should say, if I'm scoring row by row, I cannot tell that that's different. I really don't know. You must have 2 rows difference, because you have to go have set your confidence in it so that it includes 95% of the population. And that requires plus and minus 1 row. You've got to go beyond that. If you take the same data, same people, and give theirs and score them letter by letter, we end up with this distribution. We only get perfect agreement 20% of the time. Round about 17% of the time, people are going to get 1 letter better, and about 70% of the time, people are going to get 1 letter worse. But some of these people who got 1 letter better are going to have their row by row score change because they crossed the border. And most of them won't, but some will. And over here, same direction. When people have 2 letters difference between their test and retest, a greater proportion of them are going to change in that direction. And these came from exactly the same data pool. Here we just said we're going to give the score on the row by row basis, and here it is by letter basis. When we do letter by letter, with this normally sized group, 97% of the data fell within plus or minus, was included plus or minus 4 letters. So 97% of the time, the errors were 4 letters different between the test and retest, and no more than that. So we can set our confidence limits for 5 letters of change. And so we can say, letter by letter, 5 letters of change is a meaningful thing. This is not likely to happen by chance. And so here our confidence limits are 5 letters, which is into 1 row, up here it's 2 rows. And so that's an important message to take home, that when you're dealing with scoring visual acuity, you should be getting better and take notice of how much difference there is between the scores that you're trying to compare. Sometimes you kind of ask the question, is the right eye really better than the left eye, or has the vision changed from where it was last time? Now, if we're testing with letter charts, there's a limit to the visual acuity that we can test with letter charts without changing the task. If I took a letter chart about that wide and walked it up to the patient and pulled it so that, let's say, it was 25 centimetres from the patient would have to turn their head to the left to see the start of the row, and they have to turn their head to the right. They just can't pay attention to the whole row at one time. There's a limit to how far you can look left to right without wanting to move your head. And there's also a limit of the confining your attention to be able to see the whole of the row at the one time, or tend to be conscious of what the row the whole time. And this is not a hard cut-off, but I would say the closest we should present a chart like this to a patient and still say that we're measuring relatively the same function is 1 metre. So if we took a chart like the ETDRS chart, presented it to be 1 metre from the patient, the top row would subtend about 30 degrees angle. I think that's about as close as we should go. Otherwise, I think that the nature of the way the person performs the task starts to change in a significant way. And so that would happen at a visual acuity level that's about 2600, 2800, around about there. That's looking at the top, being able to see the top row at a distance of 1 metre. And so there's been new attention in severe low vision and more concern about how we measure visual acuity when the vision's pretty crappy. There are visual prostheses out there that take people from blindness to some functional vision, or from very, very poor vision to better functionality. People are more concerned about monitoring changes as people might get genetic or exotic molecular biology interventions to change their vision in one way or another. I've become involved in the classification of blind athletes for the International Paralympics Committee and the International Blind Sports Association, and so eligibility of magnitude of severity, or the severity of impairment is an issue. And epidemiologists who are going to assign resources to the visually impaired population would like to know if these blindish people are more blind than other blind people, so they can allocate resources in a more sensible sort of way. And so a few years ago, some colleagues and I notably Jonathan Jackson and Hassan Minto put together a new test which we call the Berkeley Rudimentary Vision Test, and this test is intended for going beyond the limits of the visual acuity chart. I'd say, as I said earlier, that stops at about the 2600 level, 2630 level, when the chart's being told 1 metre from the patient. And let me show you how this works. This is a tumbling E test. So the patient, if I think the patient will not be able to perform the letter chart task, I say I need to simplify the task. I've got to go to a different task. So this is a different kind of visual acuity, but it's the next step in our sequence. And I present this big E at 1 metre. This is a 100M letter. It subtends 5 minutes of arc at 100 metres. It's 15 centimetres high.
If I present this at 1 metre, it's equivalent to 22,000. And I ask the patient if they can recognise the orientation at this level. If they can, I'd say, that's good, because I can measure your visual acuity with single tumbling ease. I come over here, and this is a 25 metre E, that's at 1 metre, and I say, can you read this? Now, if the patient can read it, I'd say, you might be able to go back to the letter chart, because the top row on the letter chart is 40M. This is 25M, so this is a 60% smaller, 60% of the size of the top row on the chart. And so if the patient sees this, I perhaps should go back and test with the chart again. If the patient sees the big one and doesn't see the little one, we have two intermediates inside that we can sort of check it out with all at 1 metre. And so up to the 22,000 level, we work with single tumbling ease and at 1 metre. When the patient fails to see the big E at 1 metre, we say, whoopsie, we're in trouble, we've got to change things, let's change the viewing distance. And so I don't sneak in, I jump in, and these charts are 25 centimetres square, and we hold the chart 25 centimetres from the patient's face and say, hey you, can you see the big E now? At this stage, the big E is, if you were to write it down, it would be 0.25/100. And Don Weaver's already done the arithmetic. But that's 28,000. And so we say, hey, do you get the 8,000 E? Let's try that one. This is exactly the same size as this is 25 centimetres, this is 25 metres. And so this is exactly the same size as the big one was back here. So I bring it in here, I accept that patient's not going to see it. And then I've got intermediates on the inside. If the patient can't do that, let's say this patient is beyond optotypes. At this distance, the large optotype tends 30 degrees. I think any closer, and you find the person searching for parts and constructing, putting the wings together. And so we then say, we need to change the task, make it simpler. And so this is the grating acuity test. And again, we presented at 25 centimetres, and this one, 25 centimetres only. Presented at 25 centimetres and say, hey, can you tell the orientation of the grating? If they can, we can test the finer one. And if they can see the big one, but they can't see the small one, we've got two intermediates to test it out with. And if they can't see that, it's a end of visual acuity measurement. Oh, I didn't mention, this takes you to 2016 range. This is this given an M unit rating of 200 M, and it's being done 25 centimetres, and that takes you to 1600. If they can't do that, you'd say, I am no longer going to measure visual acuity or visual resolution on you. I'm going to do some more basic tests of vision. And again, we only do this at 25 centimetres. And we ask the patient if they can tell where the white area is. And we have a white field. Oops, hang on. Should we do that? Yeah, so we give them the white field, the heavy field, in different orientations obviously. And then if they can't, and we call this white field projection. Can you project where the white field is when we're holding this up at this sort of standard test distance of 25 centimetres? If you can't do that, we do a black-white discrimination. Can you tell whether that's black or white? Like this side, like that side. And we've got a sort of a categorical classification of vision at that level. And we've been using these, and it really does extend the range of visual acuity testing. It gives you about 13 steps to cover the range that other optometrists or other clinicians would get when they go to count fingers and hand motion. They've got 2 steps to cover this same range. They've got 30 much more firmly constructed criteria for classification. I'm going to mention something that relates to
very much the functionality, reading ability, and I'm not wanting to talk too much about reading acuity except to make the point that a reading task, reading typeset printers, is dealing with a much more congested task and it's more difficult than letter charts. And so we use charts of the kind that you see there, and as patients read down the charts, and sometimes we have a chart about close distance, but we're always making sure that we're in the patient is in progress. But we can time their reading. Sometimes we just listen to them and hear them reading with good efficiency, and then hear their efficiency slow down, the speed slow down. Or we can use our iPhone and get the data like that. We have 10 words per size level, and so you don't need to be very smart at arithmetic to realise that 6 seconds represents 100 words a minute, and 3 seconds to do a complete sentence. There's 200 words a minute, and that's where most of the slowdown takes place. Most people, when they're reading aloud, will be going a little bit faster than 200 words a minute. They're a little bit shorter time than 3 seconds, but as they approach their threshold, they slow down something like this. If we were to plot, there was a fairly fine, this person reads at a fairly constant speed up to where the red arrow is, and after that they get noticeably slower, and this we call the critical angular size. The critical angular size of speed, and in this particular set, I'm not going to take you through the details of it, but the person's reading 0.8 entry at 40 centimetres, and would say that's the smallest print average the person read with good efficiency. And you can use that as a guide when you're describing your low vision age. You'd say, I want this person to read at maximum visual efficiency. I need to have this ratio between print size and viewing distance selected appropriately. With our visual acuity, I already mentioned that that reading is a more difficult task, and the complexity of crowded visual acuity material has to do with contour interaction. The visibility of nearby detail affects your ability to see fine grates and fine the details in the target of the reading interest, such as back in the land of read, for instance. Crowding is something that's a bit different. It's being able to maintain your attention to the object of interest within an array of others, and so you have to maintain fixation on it. There's some fixation control things, and just giving attention. I'm looking at a row of these here. Which one am I really looking at this time? I'm not quite sure whether it's 40 or 50 in this set that I'm looking at, and so that's crowding. And serial integration has to do with being able to put the pieces together as you read across a row, and amblyopes and people with macular degeneration are sort of classic examples of people who have difficulty with this. When they're reading, they look at one slab of the print, they're looking at a set of letters or perhaps a word, and they have to integrate that with the word they looked at previously or the letters that they looked at previously, and then they're planning their next byte, and they have to integrate these serial bytes into the one particular thing. And people with macular degeneration are horrible at that. People with amblyopia are horrible at that. And when we record visual acuity, we should indicate whether it's reading acuity, letter chart acuity, rows of letter acuity, isolated letters with flankers on, or grating acuity. They're all different acuities. Some people will get big differences between these various acuities. Macular degeneration patients will do terrifically well with gratings, but they'll do terribly with congestion, and they do worse with reading tasks. So you need to be conscious, and you should record the acuity that you're using. Visual acuity is not just one thing, it's one of many. And what's going to happen with visual acuity in the future? We're going to go towards computerized displays. It's hard to get, you need 5 megapixels to get an ETDRS chart that is 20 rows with good resolution down at the small print. onto a video screen, and that's at the moment a bit exorbitant in the price. You can't do that very easily, even on screens like this. And so you need 5 megapixels to do it. I think the way visual acuity is going to go, they're going to be single lens with flanking bars around it, because that sort of gets closer to the letter chart. And so I think that's the way things are headed, and there are already some companies out there doing that. And computerization has some big advantages, some terrific advantages, but we can change the nature of a visual acuity task. We can change the optotype selection. We can go from E's to C's to letters to numbers to symbols of one kind or another. You can lay out the optotype in different ways. You can jumble the letter sequences so that people can't memorize things, and you can test as much as you want without worrying about memorization. You can control the luminance over a fairly good range. The contrast can be varied relatively easily. The color can be varied. And if you want, you get vary the presentation time. But there are other important implications that might be more important. How you analyse the data and how you strategize the data collection can be well controlled with computerized systems. So you can have systems that record automatically. You can have an input by keyboard or by touch or by sound, by speech, all these possibilities. You can get instant scores at any one time. You say, I've shown the patient 6 letters so far, what's the best estimate of their visual acuity and how tight am I? And you can have psychophysical methodology that will give you different ways of determining the thresholds. You can keep track of particular patterns that the person might have. The person might have trouble telling the difference between, they might find the Z very easy to see because of its diagonal line and their astigmatism or something about their retina. All these sort of things can be done sort of automatically, and you can have these things being done online. Say, current best estimate of the current score is, here's the reliability index on that score. Do you need to collect any more data? And you might want to response speeds. And so there's quite a bit of stuff about visual acuity. Now we're going to mention contrast sensitivity, and this slide here tries to illustrate how often shadow that tells us about the shape of things. In the high contrast version, it's really easy to see the protrusions and the indentations, and you can see the cylindrical nature of the can. But as we reduce the contrast, those sort of details start to wash out. So people with poor contrast sensitivity will have trouble telling the shapes. They'll look at the black sofa, and you'd say, what colour is that? They say, it's black. Are any parts blacker than others? No, it all seems to be black. But there are some highlights and there are some shadows that allow you to see the configuration of the cushions and all that sort of business. And you know how far down the seat is, and so you feel secure when you sit on it, and so forth. Poor contrast sensitivity, those parts become difficult. Now, the most common clinical way of measuring contrast sensitivity is to use the FAAO chart, which is very, very widely known. Less well known, but I think marginally better, and marginally better because it's convenient. It's just a Mars test, nice test, and that is pretty good at measuring contrast sensitivity, providing the acuity is not too bad. The person has to be able to read those letters. At Berkeley, we use our own computerized test. It's very, very hard to calibrate, so this isn't commercialized and can't be found elsewhere. But we have 2 different kinds of test tasks. The one you see on the left-hand side shows you a square in one quadrant of the screen, and that's blinking at about 6 hertz, a nice sort of easy to see flicker. And we go through a sequence by which that, as the person touches the screen and indicating that they can see the square, a new one appears, but it's fainter, and we go through a sequence where we find contrast thresholds, which they can give a response. and as they approach their threshold, their response time slows down. And we get a curve like this. This is response time in seconds on the vertical axis. On the horizontal axis, we've got the contrast getting fainter and fainter as we go across to the right-hand side. And in this example here, we can see where the threshold is, where the person really, really slows down. They don't respond at all to the next. So this is a lovely test to watch patients do. I enjoy watching patients do this test because you can see their decision-making process. You can sometimes when they're on the threshold, you see them hovering over the. I think it's there. I think it's there, and their fingers hovering over before they press. Sometimes they give up and guess, and you can see them do that. It's really interesting. There's another search task another task that we do where the person has to touch a sequence of numbers in the. We thought this was going to be terrific. We don't use it very much, but it's a different part of sensitivity, and we measure response speed as they go from one to another. And when we get close to the threshold, that might be, this might be around about 6 or 7, you're going to be slower in giving the response. Now, because of our interest in low vision and seriously visually impaired people, we put together a test that's also being, it's not found in many places, but Ohio State is one of the places where this test is being used, and we call this a Berkeley disc test. There are 3 cards in the series. This is the main card. It has 6 different contrasts on it. We look at this side, and the contrast are 0, or contrast sensitivity is 0, 0.6, and 1.2. On the other side, then we go in 6 steps. 0.6 is a factor of 4, so the contrast is getting 4 by a factor of 4. And this goes from 0.3, 0.9 to 1.5. So if we show this chart, both sides of it, we've shown 6 different contrasts. In 0.3 log unit steps covering the range from 0 to 1.5. If they don't get all of these, we go to the A card, this card here, and we have individual contrasts here. Before the steps were 0, 0.3, 0.6, and going up to 1.5. Here we start at 0.15, the next one 0.45, and we just sort of fill in the gaps. And if the person does see all 6 letters on the first card, we go to the B card, which has a few samples of 4 lower levels of contrast. So in very, very quick time we can do this. We present this at a close distance, and so people who have horrible visual acuity, 22,000 visual acuity, this is a nice large target for them. Patients with 22,000 visual acuity are not likely to be able to do tests on 11. So it's a really nice test, but it's not perfect. That a patient with very poor vision and retinitis pigmentosa is much better on a chart like this because they know where the next chart is. They don't have to go looking for it. On this, they've got to do a search, and they're not quite sure where their fixation is at any one time. They can't locate things, and so this is good for some people with very, very poor acuity, but it's not good for everyone. And so that's my little message on contrast sensitivity and functionality. Now I'm going to talk about visual fields, and this extraordinarily good looking guy in the photograph there now has a beard and I keep the waistline up a little. And I'm going to talk about the visual field test in terms of using a tangent screen. We use tangent screens a lot in our low vision field. And I'm just going to talk about a philosophy or a strategy for thinking about the way that you conduct the test. And one of the things you do with a tangent screen testing or other tests is screen. You're testing a patient for who you don't have any particular suspicion of field loss, but you just want to say, is there a field loss here or not? Let me just check it out. If you're using a tangent screen, you just want to cover the whole screen with a target that's not too visible and not too difficult. You know, it should be not too difficult and moderate accessibility, and you need to cover the whole screen. More often than not, though, we're interested in investigation. Does this person have early signs of glaucoma or some sort of subtle visual field defect? So now you're looking for, asking the question, is there a defect in this particular region where I'm worried about the pathology? When you do that, you should try to use as fine a target as you can get away with. And just to make the example so that you'll be able to understand it, is that if you said, I suspect early glaucoma in this patient, there might be some field loss, and I expect it to be perhaps a nasal step, perhaps around the disc. If you're going to test in the region of the disc, you would like a target that's visible on the internal side of the disc. As you go beyond the blind spot, it should be very, very difficult to see and go a little bit further out in the blind spot and you can't see it at all. So the threshold for detection of this target is just beyond the blind spot. So now you've got a target that's very, very difficult to see when it's in the blind spot. Now you do your exploration on the disc chance if you're doing cancer screening. If you're doing monitoring, and that's what we do a lot of the time, patient's feet was in before and now you're going to check again. If you're really interested in monitoring disease, you're best off to use a Humphrey or Silver instrument because you've got trouble with test stimuli, conditions, and ever so much better with those. But if you are doing monitoring, you should try to do the same test that you did last time. That's the only thing you can compliment with the change with the change of the mirror. But what I'm wanting to get to mainly today is functional visual field. When we do functional visual fields, we're trying to predict scotomas that are going to cause a person to bump into things. We want scotomas that are going to drive a horse and cart through, not have subtle depressions of sensitivity that you might come with early glaucoma. And recently, we've taken to using a white screen for our visual field measurement. We use a black target, a fairly large black target, sometimes at 7 millimetres in size, up to 15 millimetres in size. And we have these dark targets on a clear plastic wand that we use a white field on a 30-degree angle screen. A lot of the visual field testing that we concentrate on in low vision has to do with macular scotomas, because macular scotomas get in the way of reading tasks more often than not. And the absolute grid is not a particularly good way of detecting field loss in the central 10 degrees, test the central 10 degrees, but it doesn't pick up field loss. Most people with macular scotomas, central scotomas, don't see anything wrong at all with the grid. They'll have frank gaps in the grid, but they don't see them. Just like if you took an amphib grid and held it 10 centimetres from the base, your blind spot would be on the grid, but you would not see a gap where your blind spot is. It's there, and somebody can take a little target and they can plot out your blind spot. The blind spot's there, but you don't see a gap in the grid. You fill it. And many people with macular options fill it. So we've been doing central visual fields. We go really high tech at Berkeley. We buy these things for $6 at Office Max. They're $7 elsewhere. And we print out the grid on our computer, and we buy the paper in large quantities to save the money. And we have these little clear plastic wads with little bits of black dots on them, and we measure visual fields with those. And we do that at 50 centimetres, but we only test from the centre of 10 degrees. And we also have a little computerized test where the patient looks at the centre of the screen and a little black spot appears for a quarter of a second, and the patient presses the space bar when they see the target. And this is a white background again with a black spot. The white background makes this comparable in luminance level to the display that we present to them for the contrast test and for the visual acuity test. We're sort of testing these vision functions at backgrounds that are the same or similar luminance. we have been playing around with sort of little perimeters. This perimeter has a viewing distance of 25 centimetres. We've been doing a little bit of playing around with that. But probably more important is this little flashing diode wand that we have. We can turn the little flashing light on or off with a button press. And we do confrontation vision fields with this, dim the lights, and just move the target from behind the patient to in front, so more or less going around a bowl kind of shape. And these targets are terrific for babes in arc, babies that are a week old. You can tell whether they've got major visual field loss with targets like this, because the baby is going to just look at this, put them in dim light, and have this little light on the side. Patient, if they've got the visual field to do it, or turn their head automatically. The other important thing about visual fields that are not well pushed, but I think it's very important to understand the functionality, is that the luminance of the environment affects the visual field. And we have a light box up in my lab, about 75 centimetres squared, going to 3 foot squared. And we use a black target on a clear plastic, a bit of clear plastic. And we have a little voltage regulator to alter the brightness. And we measure the visual field on the screen, and we do that at different luminance levels. And here's a pattern that you might see with the retinitis pigmentosa patient at 100 candela per meter square, which is a medium bright, probably about as bright as this screen at the moment. They get the red field, dim the light so that it's 10% of that, and they get purple field changes. And often get bigger changes than that. And more recently, we've been using new conventional filters to do this. We test the patient, visual field. Without the filters, then we put these 4% transmission filters on, and these are just fit over sunglasses, over the counter, fit over sunglasses. They reduce the total retinal illumination to 4%, the original, so they're pretty darn dark. And here's a plot on our, coming from our computerized testing of the central 10 degrees. And in this example, our patient, this is an RP patient, they saw 36 of the 50 points when we tested them without the filter. When we test them with the filter, they get a much smaller area. They get 19 points out of the 50. Their visual field is shrinking, quantified, and it's easy. And it takes about a minute and a half to do each of these tests. So pretty good. We have been using this strategy of making the visual world darker and seeing how people go in simulated dim light environments by using these noir filters. Noir, people call it V33. I'm not quite sure what the new mean, but that's what they call them. And this is from a group of normally sighted patients, 18 patients I think for this. And what we're plotting here is their change in visual acuity and their change in contrast sensitivity as we put these filters on. Now, visual acuity on this scale here, 2 of these large grids represent 10 letters. So each, going across here, this represents a number of letters. And the average change is about, as given by the black line there, the heavy black line. And that's about 10 letters of horizontal change because of the reducing of illumination. The slope's not so dramatic for in the contrast domain, and there we have about 0.1 voltage change. And so this represents what normals do if you put these very dark filters on. This is what they do on average. And now I'm going to show you some data from some couple of pathology groups. And this group is a bunch of
macular degenerates, we call them. Patients with macular degeneration, and this is a fairly noisy plot. There's one sort of dramatic, almost horizontal line here. This covers 5 lines, 7 lines I should say, on the chart. A factor of 5-fold in the acuity, without much change in contrast sensitivity. So put this person in dim light, their acuity disappears, their contrast sensitivity doesn't change much. Now here we've got people who have poor visual acuity. This is about 2100. They lose only about a line of acuity. In dim light, they lose a lot more contrast sensitivity. So there's a lot of variation in what's happening to their visual abilities. If it's the visual acuity that's dropping, it means that they're not going to be able to read or read signs or recognise faces so well in dim light. If it's their contrast sensitivity that's dropping, it means that they're more likely to be bumping into things, tripping over things, not noticing things there in their environment. And so here's up in the top corner here, this represents what the normals do. And if you look at the lines and say how different are those lines from the normal average, they're fairly different, a lot of variation. Then here I've combined some glaucoma patients and some RP patients because the general trend is similar. Their change in vision is more profoundly affected. But most of the change is in the contrast sensitivity in the vertical direction of and the glaucoma patients don't have such dramatic change in their visual acuity or their contrast sensitivity. Their average visual acuity loss for glaucoma patients is about the average for the normals. There's a bit of variation. The contrast sensitivity loss is the dramatic. It's about 3 times the normals. The RP people, this is very individualised. And if you're going to try to understand what happens to a patient when they go from a bright light level into a dim corridor kind of level, this sort of thing is testing for functionality. And it's so darn simple and so darn inexpensive to do, and it takes very little time to take a second visual acuity measurement to design a second contrast sensitivity measurement, takes a minute and a half to full design. And sometimes, not always, we do our central visual field test with and without that. It doesn't have a lot to do with your examination. So now I'm going to try to give you the take-home messages. This is sort of basically coming about what I think is important about the different functions that when you're dealing with visual acuity measurement and you're trying to use this so you can give the patients better advice and better understand their visual acuity-based functional problems, you should always be thinking about what is the test task and identify what the test task is in the record. You should be scaling finely and giving letter-by-letter scoring, giving credit for every little extra success that they've had. But once you get beyond 2630 or thereabouts, it's time to abandon the test charts. Please do not use count fingers and hand motion. There are better ways of doing it, and I think they've got a pretty nice, not necessarily perfect, but a pretty nice way of doing it with our numerical vision test. With contrast sensitivity, that I think to best predict functionality, you should be using large targets with sharp borders, and so having the large letters that are on the polylogic chart or the large angular sized letters on this chart where you hold it at 40 centimetres, they're pretty good tasks, I think, for functional prediction. But you might need larger targets when the visual acuity is very poor, and we like our birthday tests for that. And looking at the speed of response is also relevant to understanding how the person is going to operate. If the patient is very, very slow to see the letters that are clearly super threshold contrast, but they're still hard to find and hard to identify,
they're going to have more trouble negotiating the environments where there's not contrast present in the past. So, looking at the speed of the patient response was poor. For visual fields, I think if you're asking about visual field loss that cause a patient to have difficulties with navigation and orientation, you should have strong visual stimuli. I think we should be using photopic background. We shouldn't be using the traditional black screens, the germ screen. And I think the dim backgrounds that we had for the Humphrey and the Goldman and the 10 millimeter square, that's pretty darn dull. And I think we should be going to quite a lot levels. And I think using black target like white is probably more relevant than the white and white targets. And the last point I want to make is I think for functionality, we should be paying attention to what happens when we change the illumination or the retinal illumination. We think the easiest way to do this is to take a standard filter, and it doesn't have to be the filter that we choose to use in 23, but we should have a standard way of doing it and just have it fit over glasses that say, here's the way I measure your visual acuity. I'm going to see what reducing the light level does to your acuity. Here's a field of similar brightness on which we measure your contrast sensitivity. That's the effect of contrast sensitivity. So we're dealing with the same range. And perhaps you do that with your field difference. Okay. That's it. Well, I thank you for your attention and the opportunity of doing this.